Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ways to Increase Your Retail Tech Acumen. Today's webinar is sponsored by BigCommerce, Invista, and Manhattan, and produced by SmartBrief. My name is Keith Ward. I'm with SmartBrief, and I'm thrilled to be your host for this special event today. But before we get the discussion started, I do need to cover some housekeeping items for you. Okay, first off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the discussion, so keep those questions coming. Now, that Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues you might be experiencing. A browser refresh is the first thing you want to do to fix most audio, video, and slide advancement issues, and then give it another refresh if that doesn't work. Sometimes it takes a couple of them. If that still doesn't work, let us know in that Q&A, and we will hop on and provide further technical assistance. All right, second, check out the handouts section, which is right next to that questions tab. There you'll find some great resources, including links and PDFs from all of our companies today, all of our sponsors, which are BigCommerce, Invista, and Manhattan. Now, those resources are free and available to download anytime, including right now, so take advantage of them and head to the handouts section. Third, at the end of this event, we're going to be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one of you. Now, you do have to be in attendance during the entire live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of the prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find all that boring legalese right there. And with that, folks, why don't we get to today's fantastic content? I am so excited about this. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our moderator for today's discussion. That is Susan Rush, an editor and moderator with SmartBrief. Susan is ready to go, so I am going to turn this over to her. Susan, you have the floor.
Thanks, Keith. I appreciate the intro. I'm looking forward to today's discussion. We have three amazing panelists with us here today. We have Megan Stabler, SVP of Marketing at BigCommerce, Jean Bornak, SVP Microsoft and Retail Technologies at Invista, and Chris Shaw, Vice President of Solutions Marketing at Manhattan. Before we jump too far in, Megan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and BigCommerce?
Sure. Thank you, Susan. Hello, everybody. My name is Megan Stabler. As you said, I'm Senior VP here at BigCommerce. BigCommerce, if you don't know who we are, one of the world's leading e-commerce platforms. And we also are a data product feed management company with Feedonomics that allows you to connect to channels, socials, and marketplaces too. So been in the industry for quite a while. Delighted to be here.
Great. Happy to have you. And Jean, let's hear about you.
With Invista. At Invista, we're an end-to-end supply chain consultancy that focuses on helping our customers with everything from concept to consumption. I've been around retail for a long time. It's a passion, and I'm really excited to be here.
Great. Excited to have you. And Chris, let's round out our panel. Let's tell us about yourself.
Sure, thanks. Manhattan has been around about a little more than 30 years. It's an end-to-end supply chain commerce company from software standpoint, everything from point of sale to warehouse and transportation management on the other end. I've been at Manhattan about 7 years now. My teams are responsible for solution marketing, partner marketing, and analyst relations. And my personal background in omnichannel retail started maybe 20 years ago or so, working for a tiny startup called Yantra as an architect, implementing what at the time was a brand new thing called a distributed order management solution, which eventually through acquisition went on to become IBM Sterling OMS, which is fairly well known in the retail space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all three of you for coming today. Just listening to your backgrounds, I know it's going to be a great discussion. Just a little background on what we're going to be talking about today. We're always asking ourselves, what's the Holy Grail of retail? That's a really tough question. But one thing's for sure, choosing the right technology is key to uncovering that answer. And today we're going to explore what technologies retailers need to truly see transformation in their omnichannel retailing. Let's go ahead and kick off our discussion. Jean, let's start with you. what are the biggest retail trends you're seeing right now?
Well, besides a day-to-day fight to survive and grow market share, the biggest trends really are the continual journey of digital, right? So we entered the digital phase of retail just about 30 years ago, and we're still seeing retailers working to try and move towards a unified commerce type of retail, where it really doesn't matter where the customer comes to them from, as they'll fulfill their needs in a store, at their home, in a box someplace, at a UPS store, wherever. It's agnostic to the customer's demand point and fulfills that order in a profitable fashion. And that's really the Holy Grail, right? So much of digital is still struggling to make money at a per order level. So the Holy Grail is getting the inventory to the right spot to make sure that they meet that customer demand wherever it comes from.
Great. And Chris, what would you add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's lots of specific tech. I think my answer probably is a little more philosophy than specific tech. To me, the most beneficial thing are those that reduce the amount of effort and exertion for the customer, right? So whether it's tech or a process improvement, make my life easier, help me resolve my needs faster. I think specifically for, retail tech trends, everybody is talking about Gen AI, of course, but we're seeing some other initiatives like accelerating RFID usage in the store for inventory accuracy, more ways to offer self-service, especially during post-purchase, and using intelligence like machine learning to fulfill, digital order promises more profitably.
Yeah, I think it's really important, that we talk about AI, but realize there are a lot of other technologies that retailers are relying on and should be relying on. And Megan, what technologies do you see are the most beneficial for optimizing customer experience?
Well, I mean, as we just talked about, right, AI and Gen AI, right, we're seeing it comes as a benefit and also as a risk if you don't get it right. I mean, people really want to have human interaction, and if you're using AI incorrectly, think chatbots, and don't have a really good chatbot that is true AI, but also represents the feeling and the emotion that it's human, you're probably going to fail on the brand ambassadorship. But, data is important. I mean, we talked about that, using it from a sort of fulfillment and inventory. We've seen, the move towards augmented reality, right? The ability to go ahead and see and try online. So we're seeing that not just in the sort of fashion industry with big commerce brands and retailers, but we're seeing it in manufacturing, to actually zoom in and find bits, pieces, and parts. Think about very complex product catalogs that some of the attendees may have in the automotive afterparts space, or think of it in furniture, right? I just want to be able to see the configuration that I've designed this settee or sofa in my home space. So I'd say that it's sort of AI and ML that's been already discussed. I'd say it's making sure that augmented reality, virtual reality is in there. But getting your data right is key and essential. If you don't get the data right from a customer experience and creating that seamless experience, then any other parts of the chain could fail. And if they do, your ambassador for your product that is willing to tell somebody how good the experience is becomes a detractor. So getting it right is so key.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great foundation for what we're going to talk about today. I hope everyone listening in is excited. Chris, I'm wondering, what are the key metrics that retailers should track to measure success of their unified commerce and omni-channel strategies? And, how are these metrics being effectively analyzed to drive improvements?
Well, I mean, there's certainly plenty to choose from, I think, depending on where you're looking inside that buyer journey. But, when we step back and we consider that inventory is the single largest piece of investment for any retailer, it makes sense to focus a lot of our effort there. So, when it comes to an omni standpoint, the idea that we have these orders that are initiating in numerous channels, a lot of times digitally, and the fulfillment is also being spread across numerous channels, makes that more difficult, right? So understanding KPIs that impact revenue performance, like percentage of split shipments or number of inventory shorts and more, those start to become really critical. And at Manhattan, we know from the Unified Commerce Benchmark work that we published last year, promising and fulfillment was far and away the worst performing category for all of the retailers that we evaluated. Some were higher than others, but in general, it was a depressed area of the entire metric. So getting inventory and fulfillment right, I think, is just a huge opportunity for these retailers to differentiate from their competitors as well.
Great. And Megan, what would you add here?
I want to echo that, right? But let's take it from me as the consumer, me as the shopper, right? If COVID showed us anything, it's the expectations have changed for your shoppers. So at BigCommerce, we've really worked hard on making sure not only that you have the standard things like BOPUS, right? Buy online, pick up in store, or pick up curbside, and Boris for the returns and stuff. But through our Feedonomics capabilities, we've also just launched instant commerce, right? Think about the Ubers and the Lyfts and the Deliveroos that are out there, or Uber Eats, right? We're all using some of these services to deliver something to us. Uber just announced today their sort of go-get, right, facility, right? Amazon moved from that Prime to be same-day delivery. So we're taking an approach to work with brands and retailers, those that have sort of a physical store as well as virtual stores. Go online virtually to buy, figure out where the location inventory is. And if you want to use it, use the option of these instant delivery. I mean, I say instant, but probably within 2, 3, 4 hours for that delivery capability. And we built that into the platform to make it easier. But when you're measuring, right, inventory is a starting point. And you've got to be able to measure that. But there are the other things, right? What is my lifetime value that I'm getting from me, Megan Stabler, when I go to one of the brands I like Piranha for my hiking pants and shorts and stuff like that? You've got to think about checkout optimization. Am I filling the cart? Do I have a lower abandoned cart rate? Is that experience that I'm delivering online, delivering a good experience where somebody's willing to add more into the checkout, and therefore conversion is going to be higher on me? So, looking at things like average order value, thinking about abandoned cart rates, looking at channel performance, right? And I'll end it with this. People today buy for two reasons. They buy for an emotional reason, or they buy for what I call a needful reason. The emotional one is that they saw somebody with something and they go, wow, that looks great, I need to have it too. And the needful is, oh my gosh, I'm out of supply of X, I need to go ahead and refill it. So that's your subscriptions and reorders. And you see Amazon doing that pretty well today. The emotional thing is to capture me wherever I am. So if you can measure your channels, whether it's offline retail, online retail, or it's conversions through your Instagram shopping or TikTok shops or Facebook shops or different marketplaces. You want to be able to measure that. And again, that's another capability that we can provide out of the box for brands and retailers is I need to connect whatever it is I'm selling, if it's makeup or glassware or something like that, to somebody in that emotional need and make sure that my brand is hitting them on Instagram. And in that emotion, I'm enabling that checkout within inside of Instagram or within inside of TikTok to make it happen. So I think somebody earlier said removing the friction or making it seamless, right? That's what we have to do in this modern world because expectations, as I mentioned at the beginning, have changed.
Yeah, I just want to build on that a little bit, Megan. It's really interesting. It used to be in store or online, but Jean, the digital physical store divide it's just shrinking. And, the store often becomes the hub. How can retailers create a customer experiences through their associates? And, where does AR or VR fit in? Jean?
Well, it's an interesting question, right? So, we keep our eye on the ball a little bit that still, I think this past year, the NRF said over 80% of revenues for retailers occurred in stores, right? Mm-hmm. So, I think when you think about that, then taking that divide and blowing it up and making sure that you've put technology in place and process in place and the right people in place to make sure that customer can get a fulfilling experience in the store, which means they can get inventory out of that store when they're there on their visit when all possible. And we have technology to make sure that if it's not there, they can get it there or at home really quickly. But we need to remember that to Megan's point, a lot of purchases are emotionally driven, right? Fundamentally, on the $5 or $6 trillion in retail that's done in this country, there's probably less than 2 trillion that's actually need, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe 3 when you add gasoline into it. So there's a lot of wants that are being fulfilled, right? So you need to do the emotional triggers and having the right inventory and the right people in stores, and then covering that with the right technology so you know who that customer is, right? One of the metrics that I like to think about is recency, frequency, and monetization, right? And for me to know how recently a customer was in the store, I have to know my customer. So I have to deploy technology in the store, in the process, either in the sales associate's hands or at the point of purchase, to make sure that I can acknowledge who they are, and then I know when they come back, and then I can market my products, get the right products for them to come back. So, I think that the divide exists more in our mind than it does in the customer's mind, right? Mm-hmm. So then it's a matter of keeping the promise, right? So customers today don't perceive, if I'm shopping at a Target store, they don't perceive a difference between Target and Target online. They don't perceive any difference. It's one thing to them. So they want their needs met where they are. So that's why Target and companies like Target have done a massive growth of fulfilling from a hub in their store for digital orders, right? Because the customer doesn't see a difference. And as a retailer and as a technologist, we need to work towards a day where the actions in the business don't belie a difference, right? Where we don't think about channels, we think about customers and products, and then it's just points of fulfillment.
Can I just add in there? I completely agree with Gene on this, right? And it sort of started with the experience, in-store experiences started a long time ago, but getting people, when we were worried that people are not going to go back to in-store shopping, there was I wouldn't say there was a shift. There was a marketing desire to make sure that people were putting experiences within inside of the store. So activations within inside of the store. You're doing sort of a walk the runway inside of a fashion brand or something. Mm-hmm. But there is a huge gap right now between those smaller retailers that do have a physical store and what I'll call that anchor brands that are in these shopping malls today that are doing their best to attract shoppers and buyers back in, but they don't have the inventory. So my personal experience, and I wrote a blog post on LinkedIn about it about 2 months ago, was atrocious when I went to 3 big name brand anchor stores within inside of one of the local malls here in Austin, Texas. The staff didn't care. They didn't have the inventory. And all I was told, well, if you want, I can take your order now and it will be delivered within 3 days to you. And that's not what I want. If you go back to what I talked about before, right? We want that instant gratification and satisfaction. So as Gene talked about, are they becoming logistics hubs, right? Is the expectation that I can go there and I can feel, I can try, right? As a replacement for what happened over the last few years, which is I'm going to order 3 things or the same thing in 3 different sizes to see what fits. And then I'm going to return the 2 that don't fit me. And, that is bad for sustainment and sustainability in the environment when I do that. So we've got a long way in my mind to go where the experience in store recognizes me and knows me when I walks in. Hopefully you're not going to chip me, so you RFID me when I walk in there. But that experience is really what, if you're a brand or a retailer on this, your marketers have really got to think about loyalty, promotions, experiences, right? Cooking inside of the kitchenware store, fashion, rent the runway, not just for those that are skinny and nice, but for those of us that are large and different, right? Or if you're into sports, going to a sports store for a better fly fishing or better ways to throw the football or whatever it may be, right? We've got to start thinking about those experiences, but that isn't necessarily going to increase what one of the questions was, which is what are the key metrics? Increasing your average order value. I think people go shop and they have that emotional connection. They went in to get one thing and they come out with 4 things that they didn't need. You don't get that. I went online, I wanted to buy one thing, and wow, amazingly, I added another 4 things to the cart and checked out. So there's a balance on both sides that I think we've got a ways to go in creating this unified commerce experience that will drive an increase in value and orders.
I think, Megan, you make a great point. I think about the Costco example, right? They have a quality online experience, but they really don't want you to shop online, right? Because when we've shopped online or we've used Instacart to order our Costco, our ticket is 1/3 the size of when we go in the store. And I don't think we're atypical, right? So there are a lot of retailers that have learned the lesson that if they get somebody in and they romance them with whatever their value proposition is, then they can get better lifetime value for the customer, which is a key metric, because one of the metrics that we don't talk much about is foot traffic has plummeted over the last 8 years, not just because of COVID. And with fewer people buying, that means we need to activate a higher percentage of those customers when they're in the store and get them to buy things, right? Which means, to your point, out of stock, that's an important metric. If, and it's a core retail metric. If you don't have something on the shelf, are you in business, right? And I walk into some of those same big box retailers you're talking about, and the stores are unkempt, unstocked, and unshoppable, right?
Yep.
So then that sends me to the digital equivalent, but it reduces my loyalty, because now when I'm shopping digitally, I can have 5 stores up on my screen simultaneously.
Yeah. I do want to add one more thing. I know we're getting away, Susan, from what you're talking about here, but
no, it's okay.
To add on to Gene, and for people in our audience, right, my out of the box thinking just went to one thing that you said. If they don't have it in the store, right, I'm going to go online and find it, and I may be prompted with a bunch of different digital ads because I'm putting in a Google search term and keywords, right? But nobody in that physical store is probably tracking. Megan came into the store and asked for, like, my daughter's 12, she had a dance. That's why I was getting pissed off, because we couldn't get the things. They didn't have the shoes she wanted, even though they were in the store. They didn't have the dress she wanted, even though that was on display. Didn't have a bunch of other things. Nobody wrote that down to be able to take that data and say, hey, because you want to be able to aggregate all this data and say, hey, we seem to be getting a lot of requests for teenage dresses of this size and style and SKU. We better make a push. Maybe we should do some digital advertising on it and do those things. So the way that cookies used to work to track me online, nobody's doing that in the store. And so stores are sort of dying on the vine because they're missing that opportunity unless somebody walked in to buy a specific thing or bought emotional things and added it to their shopping bag. So key thought, track everything as much as you can do. And that's going to take technology, which I think is one of the points we're trying to make here, that don't neglect employee training, right? Investing the training for employees to give that wonderful experience that makes Gene and I coming back into your stores, but use technology effectively, right? Because poor implementation of it can negate all the benefits of technology investments.
Yeah, that statement just goes right into where I was going to go next. So that was perfect, Megan. What are some of those technical challenges that retailers are facing when they're implementing a unified commerce system? Gene, let's start with you and then move to Chris.
Well, I think that the first challenge, having implemented a bunch of this, is that retailers don't sit on modern technology stacks. So when you bring in a modern technology to support unified commerce, say it's Manhattan's Active Omni, for example, it's not going into a cloud-ready organization, right? So you start with data is in 17 places. There's multiple constituencies in the business that have contending agendas for what should happen. So from a technical point of view, the challenge is aligning the technology with the outcome, right? So you can get modern technology, but in most cases it's plugging into not so modern technology. So you have to unify that. And then you have to set, from a technology point of view, what you're trying to achieve, right? The modern tool sets can do amazing things. And in a lot of ways, they can run faster than your supply chain or your stores network or even your people, right? So you have to make sure that you choose a technology. You can put unified commerce in, but then how far do you go, right? Taking it all the way down to point of sale. Are you putting devices in the store, whether they're AR, VR, or handheld devices? What is your definition of unified commerce? But the technology, I think, is far more mature than when we started working with it 20 years ago. But still, it's going into, in a lot of cases, it's going into retail environments that are underinvested. So it's a challenge to actually achieve your results on unified commerce out of the box.
And Chris, what do you see are those challenges, and what maybe some best practices retailers can use?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Gene said there is kind of right on the money, right? This legacy software, it really was never designed to work in an omni-channel workflow, right? It creates friction for your customers, and it creates friction for your associates. And when there's friction, you get avoidance, which is not good in either case, right? And so There's also friction for your IT teams too, right? I mean, it's a tremendous amount of human capital that goes into just upgrading your software to get new capabilities. And the regression testing of everything that has to go in there and be, it's sort of exhausting, right? You want to be spending your human capital on your customers, not your computers. And with modern technology, all of that is actually unnecessary. Yes, you have to get it integrated and get it put in, and you've got to have a strong roadmap to how you're going to put it in. But I would encourage retailers to get aligned, right, to accelerate their move not only to the cloud, but to cloud native software, right? It allows them to reallocate their human capital and put it where they want it focused, which is on their customers, because they're all understaffed, undermanned. The technology can help with that, but you've got to get to that first place, right? That first point. And you don't have to do it all at once. In fact, nobody does it all at once, as Gene was saying. But most of the modern platform architectures were designed with the idea that they were going to work with legacy systems until you could deprecate those. But you kind of have to get going, and you have to have a commitment of everybody in the organization to begin that move.
I'm going to agree with that. I think the good thing with composable architecture or moving to the cloud is that all of these upgrades that you probably have to go to and wait on your IT organization for, or fixes to security breaches and other things get taken care of. I mean, I as bad as an analogy this would be, I drive it akin to, Gmail. You don't upgrade your Gmail account. You get new versions all the time that are flying out to your phone or your laptop or your MacBook. It's the same with a sort of modern platform as well, but a modern platform that is open allows you to pick best of breed connections. I mean, we talked about data at the beginning here. So are you really using the best CDP in the market to go ahead and track, unified customer data from all those different touch points that we talked about? Are you integrating in augmented reality or virtual reality to try it out? Are you doing it by specific regions or brands or segments of businesses that you've had? And we've had good experiences with some of our retailers that you probably know, whether it's, major end retailers like Harvey Nichols in the UK, or you're looking at Cons Electronics, or you're looking at Francesca's stores and these things. We're trying to modernize what was just talked about, right? Often brands and retailers that are in these sort of box retail situations don't have the most modern tech stack. And if they don't, they're going to fall behind. So how can you modernize at the same time keeping the wheels on, the lights on, etc., but also give you that future fit, right? And it's not future fit purely for the technology perspective, but it's future fit for customer expectations, because you've got to be able to merge and drive the things that Gina and I were talking about together to make sure that your shoppers feel like they're the only shopper in the store. Hopefully they're not the only shopper in the store. You talk about foot traffic, but they need to feel. I need to feel that I am the only person in the store. Same thing when I fly on an airline. I've got the elite status. I like that, and I like being acknowledged when I check into a hotel for having a status. We need to do that for people, whether they're shopping online or they're walking into a store to experience something. So a modern tech stack is really essential in today's era.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about automated management and supply chain. Gene, from your perspective at Invista, how important is automation in the supply chain management? And, kind of what are the key areas where automation can drive the most significant improvements for businesses?
Well, you look out on the supply chain end, right? So we're seeing a massive move. I would say it's a groundswell. It's not a tidal wave yet to much more highly automated supply chains, especially in distribution centers, right? It's being driven by several things. First of all, it tends to be faster. It also tends to allow you to limit your liability around people, because most distribution facilities are suffering a shortage of people. And it gives you the ability to have visibility and control through the process. So if we go back to a unified commerce promise, and part of that promise is that when you transact with me, I'll be able to tell you what's going on with your order all the way up till it's in your hand, right? The more highly automated your supply chain is, by the nature of automation, creates visibility at tons of points through the process. Whether it's through vision software, barcode scanners, any number, RFID, any number of technologies that are very mature at this point in time, I can highly automate things. And then when you think about the next layer of automation, which is controlling my order flow and making sure that my inventory is in the right position. Artificial intelligence, which was mentioned earlier, is going to have a huge impact on our ability to have the right levels of inventory in the right places in our network to make sure then when automation kicks in on the physical side, that there are items to pick and move to the customer. Sometimes in advance even of the customer's orders, if we know what our customer flow looks like. So automation is going to be an ever increasing thing, from fully dark facilities to facilities with lots of people in them, but that have technology next to them all the time, helping them move things more efficiently and more accurately.
Great. And Chris, what role does automated management play in Manhattan Associates solutions? And then as a second part, how can retailers best implement these technologies to optimize their operations?
Sure. I mean, when we talk about automation across the supply chain, there's a lot of things that we could cover here. But, today when we have so many orders coming in from so many channels and being fulfilled from so many channels, including now potentially hundreds or even thousands of stores, right, that this real-time understanding of what my business is doing right now becomes difficult. And as Gene said, we've got to move away from a reactionary business intelligence reporting side where I learned what happened and then, next time I'll do something different. We're now in a mode of this is happening right now, so we need to adjust right now. And the automation starts to become really important because the humans can't react fast enough. So whether that is true automation hardware, right? Certainly we have that. At Manhattan, we built a warehouse execution system inside of our WMS to manage every kind of physical automation in the DC, from voice to vision to robots to conveyance. But the other thing that Gene talked about there, the automation on the order side, closer to the customer, that's sort of on the software side, is a really interesting space. At Manhattan, we've sort of been focusing in the Omni side of things on really two levels of automation, right? One is a little more of empowered enablement. The other one is true automation, right? So in the past 5 years, the move to in-app real-time insights to help retail leaders adapt faster, right? And also to create configuration preferences that will automatically perform adjustments based on changes to the environment. So if you think about it in a relatively simple example, if a store or a set of stores is starting to fall behind on fulfillment promises, for instance, or they're rejecting orders, the system is smart enough to recognize that and to begin to remove that facility from the fulfillment options for the digital orders until that facility is back up to whatever quality standard we've configured. And then on that enablement side, one of the things we've done recently is, because of all of our customers are on that common cloud native platform, we can show them anonymously how they're performing in real time against hundreds of their peers and competitors for key performance metrics, right, that are related to things like retail fulfillment. And they get it all in a single dashboard, right? Are we using our stores as well as others? Is our inventory accuracy as strong as others? Are returns higher or lower than others? And they can start to make some more closer to real-time decisions. Now, the automation system is making those true instantaneous decisions, and they can learn later what it did and make adjustments to it. But this also gives them a chance to respond intraday, right, to what's happening, what's going on, or intra-week or intra-month to those performance areas. And it allows them to better understand the effectiveness of their offerings, like we're adopting pickup in this particular region. It can help them better measure their performance, obviously identifying what they're doing well, but all of the opportunities of where they have a chance to improve those experiences and make those decisions that will ultimately, allow them to drive growth.
Yeah, and Megan, just thinking about big commerce, how are you leveraging automation to enhance customer engagement and streamline marketing processes?
Well, I'm going to put it into AI, right? We're leveraging AI to help with that. I mean, automation of workflows, whether you're B2B and stuff like that, those are some of the essential things that you have to have in there. But, using AI to, remove what you have to do manually today as a e-commerce manager or a brand manager or something like that, making sure that when you're writing a product description, you don't have to, you can just tell the Gen AI prompts to go do it, but do it with inside of your brand voice and brand tone, right? That's key, because you don't want to have Gen AI create something and you put it out there as your SKU definition and variant, and then it's not in your brand tone and voice. But some of the automations that we've built in, again, through AI and leveraging AI that we've been doing for a number of years, is all of this data that you've got, all the information on all the SKUs, right? Millions of SKUs, hundreds of thousands of SKUs, or thousands of SKUs, making sure that it's refined for the different channels, socials, and marketplaces at scale is important, because when you're trying to sell on Amazon or TikTok or Instagram or Target, or go through the hundreds of marketplaces or social channels, each one has a different schema. And today we have people that are writing the definition of the shoe and the description for Amazon, and it has to be slightly tweaked to be on Instagram and slightly tweaked again. So taking it at scale and saying, hey, using AI technology to do it at speed and consistently, again, to help getting the eyeballs on it. So it's really, I'm going to use loose automation, but really it's AI through the technology. But I agree on, we've got to connect the dots all the way from the supply chain, so we don't have what happened 4 or 5 years ago, 4 years ago, right? I hate to think about how long ago it was, where we didn't have inventory into this, and then starting to leverage technologies to start looking at what inventory you've not sold, right? Should you be promoting this? Do you want to do a discount on this? Do you want to offer this SKU up for you bought this, but we can offer you 50% off of this one if you want to add it to your bag. So I think there's a lot of ways that I'm loosely saying automation, but I'm talking about AI and insights, and really making sure that experience is generating to what we started off with, which is increase average order value, reduce the abandoned carts, make sure that you're promoting or doing promotions and loyalty in groups, or advanced analytics. I mean, that's the other key thing for me is making sure that somebody has a really robust grasp on all of your inventory incoming and all of your outgoing shipping. And then that sort of last component of that chain that could break, which is your returns. Right? What are you doing today that is unfortunately impacting the number of returns? And are you passing that back on to your buyers, meaning inside the company, you've got a buyer that buys certain inventory of stock and goods, to let them know that we're seeing badness over here. So you've got to connect that whole chain, and then you've got to connect customer support. It's difficult, but technology can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to, since we're talking about AI, let's stick there for a few minutes. Jean, what do you think, what steps should retailers take to position themselves to take full advantage of this technology, and how Megan was talking about it in other ways?
Well, it's interesting you ask, because my other hat, if you look at my job description, is I run our Microsoft business, and Microsoft has made tens of billions of dollars of investment in AI, right? So we've been living that now for quite a while. But as I look to what retailers should do, the first advice that we give is the same thing that we've learned along the way in AI in our business is make sure you ask a couple questions. One, is your data ready? And are your users ready? Right? And then the last question is, what are you trying to achieve? Right? So to Megan's example, and I love this example, right? Retailers are notoriously bad at reacting to large events, right? Whether it's a pandemic or it's a hurricane or it's a nor'easter that knocks out power in New England for days. Retailers aren't really good at that. So if you have a solid data model, a solid data foundation, and let's say you've plugged in the right unified commerce tool sets and you've started to get your data all organized, and it's in one data lake, and you have responsible data management. You lay AI on top of that. Now it can be smart enough to do things. The next question is what are you trying to achieve, and can your people achieve it, right? So it's really, you have to understand what the tools can and can't do, right? There's still 20% potential hallucination in some of these large language models, right? So you have to be able to work your way through understanding the answers, right? Because you might ask it, well, what do I do? There's a hurricane in Louisiana, and it might say, ship toilet seats, because the last hurricane, for some reason, it sold a lot of toilet seats. You don't want to do that, right? So you have to understand the hallucinations and what your outcomes are. But AI, for somebody who's a former buyer and planner, AI is going to be an amazing thing, because my ability to predict behaviors based on massive amounts of data that I could never comb through is going to be a game changer. I have tool sets in my other area that adjust themselves 3 or 4 trillion times a day from outside inputs, right? On a good day, I can probably take 6 inputs, maybe 7.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time for retailers. We know AI has been around for a while, but it's just really interesting to see where it's headed, and definitely embracing it is step one. Chris, I'm curious how Manhattan is incorporating AI into its solutions.
Sure. Actually, we just announced last week our first commercial production introduction of Gen AI components within our solution set. And I think when you're a retailer, it's easy to get confused, right, with the AI and the machine learning, which is actually a subset of AI, and then you've got generative AI, which is a component of some large language models and some other capabilities down there in the AI stack. But in general, generative AI really shows some incredible promise, I think, but it's still in its infancy. And I think for retailers, there are probably 2 or 3 use cases where it is showing high enough promise and capability right now that it'd be something worth looking at. And I think the first is probably customer service, right? Both for directly interacting with consumers, especially if the GPT has native access to every interaction and transaction, which is one of the things that Gene mentioned earlier about having access to all the data and the data being normalized and available. Well, for our customers, that's not a problem, right? Because they're already on this common platform. And so when they turn this on, they can already take advantage of that, which means, all right, if you're talking to the customer, they can immediately offer advanced exchanges, returns, changes to pickups and delivery windows, and offer promotions. It can detect sentiment and determine when it's time to escalate. And it also can work on the side of the agents. It can assist the agents and make them more efficient, right? They can summarize their previous transactions. They can gather relevant interaction and transaction histories. They can take care of all that boring case closeouts and summaries and those kind of things to let that human agent get focused on the next person. And I think right now that's probably the primary use case. The second one, I think, that shows a lot of interesting opportunity, and we showed some prototypes of this, is more for ad hoc initiatives. Right? So think about it, the store manager who wants to send a promo to all customers who ordered more than $250 last November, but nothing so far this year. Right? They don't have a report for that, right? They don't have they're not going to go build a report for that. He just thought of that morning, or she just wanted to do that. She can just ask it to do that. It will immediately do it. Not only will it do it, it'll generate an email and send it out to the correct ones of your associates who have the contacts for those people. Or maybe they want to know which of their store team members are most efficient at fulfilling online orders last week, so they can be selected to train the new hire that's coming in this week. These are things that can just ask, and immediately it becomes available to them. And then I guess maybe the last opportunity that we've explored is advanced configuration. So think about workflow or promotional guidance, right? Sometimes it's kind of hard to understand how a solution was configured by the previous user. Gen AI can just summarize what the configuration is doing, tell you who made the change. It can modify and create new configurations with just simple human-like conversations instead of having to go through numerous configurations, screens, settings, and those types of things. So I think there's a lot of promise, and those are maybe some of the particular areas that I think retailers that we've talked to are really focused on for now.
Yeah, can I add another one to that, Chris? And that is, if you're a brand or retailer, manufacturer, distributor, wholesaler, whatever it may be, and you have PDFs, right? How to use, how to build, how to put something together, do those things. Think about using AI for exposing those manuals, for lack of a better word, to your customers in a AI iterative perspective, because it'd be really, really useful. And then finally, I'll just say, look, I think the value of AI is absolutely tremendous. And when I did a couple of talks on it over the last few weeks, it comes with its risk, right? It is still very early stages to the points that both Gene and Chris made, right? You have to, if you're using generative AI, to go ahead and generate text, paragraphs, a document, make sure that you are cleansing it, you're washing it, making sure that there's no sort of AI hidden intricacies in that, especially if you're a marketer that is now going to be using that for some sort of blog post, right? Because that's scale. AI can help you drive content really fast. But if you use it in a way without checking it with AI bot detectors and other things, that the Bings of this world and the Googles of this world are going to deprioritize you in the search terms, because it's going to detect that it's been written by AI and not be a human. So, be cautious. And then, as I said at the very beginning, be cautious about your chatbots, right? Because chatbot AI is coming of age, but until it can answer the questions of where it just tells me, hey, I'm Mandy, I'm here to help you search for your vehicle, and I'll say, what day is today, or what was the major headline in your local newspaper, right? Until it can really get true with me, I'm still going to want to speak to a human. So we've got some ways to go before AI, for me, really from a user interaction, to become me ignoring it and just saying, yes, I want to use it because it's speed and flexibility and fast.
That's great. Yeah, I think we could sit here and talk all day about technologies, AI, but I want to make sure that I get a chance for each of you to provide, 2 to 3 key takeaways that you want to make sure each of our audience members leaves the webinar with today. Gene, let's start with you.
Well, first thing, I'm almost always say this is a takeaway, retail across the unified commerce sphere is alive and well, right? There are struggles on individual retailers on a daily basis, but it's a vibrant business. It's still a growing business, and technology will make it even better, right? It's a matter of, the second takeaway is knowing what you want to achieve and harnessing the technology in the right way, and doing it in a fashion where you don't break other things in the process. And the third thing is that retail has had, in my experience over 30 plus years, a desire to chase a shiny object. That's because we like shiny objects. We sell them to customers. AI is probably more of a transformative technology than we've seen in the last 35 or 40 years. Since we started putting connected point of sale into stores 45 years ago, AI is probably the biggest thing. It's our obligation as technology people and retailers to use it in a fashion that it actually lifts the customer experience at the same time, lifting revenues and profits, right? So that's the intersection of that. But I think that those 3 things, are key to the way I think about the marketplace today.
Great. Megan?
Boy, as you said, I could talk for days on this stuff. My mojo is just figuring out this stuff for modern commerce, right? And every year we're going to say the same thing, modern commerce, right? So I think it's getting your tech stack right, give you that ability to be agile and nimble, to test and learn, to do A/B testing as needed in regions or areas, adopt technologies when they can become available that are going to be beneficial, right? I mentioned instant commerce from Feedonomics is one today, connecting into channels and marketplaces. So, don't stay where you are just because, right? If you can be a growth-minded brand and retailer, even if you don't have budget right now, always be asking, right? Always be intuitive and asking the question about what are the technologies that we're missing. And that leads me to my number one thing that I tell everybody to do. Look at what your competition is doing, because if you're not doing it, you will be outcompeted and probably out of business. So never forget what your competition is adopting or analyzing in today's world, but make sure you've got a technology stack that can allow you to engage, innovate, and expand for your growth.
Great. And Chris, round us out.
Yeah, sure. I guess what I would say is, we've talked about some pretty cool stuff today, right? AR, VR, AI, right? But none of those really are going to cure you or fix you if you have poor foundational setup. So your core capabilities of inventory accuracy, visibility, promising and fulfillment, if you don't have those, you can't drive that unified experience that everybody's been talking about this whole time, right? If you get those wrong, it really doesn't matter what we stack on top of it. It's just going to make it a little messier. The promising has to be fast and accurate. It's as important as size and color today, right? And in the end, you have to have that unified experience from online into the store to the post-purchase support. And I think that's a particular area in post-purchase that a lot of retailers think of as sort of after the fact, but it's really critical to the overall capability set. So I would say the core capabilities of, knowing where your stuff is, knowing how to get to it, knowing how to make promises that can be fulfilled, and then actually fulfilling those promises. If you can't get those parts right, then you'll struggle just adding all the bells and whistles on top.
Yeah, absolutely. Technology without understanding what your business is not going to be helpful. Well, thank you so much, Chris, Megan, and Jean, for joining me today for this discussion. As I said, we could probably just talk and talk and talk. Maybe we need a part 2, but if you did submit a question, please know that we will capture them. But unfortunately, we've run out of time, so I'm going to throw it over back to Keith.
Hey, thank you so much, Susan. Fantastic discussion. This is kind of not in my wheelhouse, a lot of the topics you discussed today. So I learned so much. My eyes were opened. I was enlightened, just all the things I really look for in an event such as this. So I want to thank you and all of the guests, a real all-star lineup for what I learned today and what I hope all the attendees learned. Thanks, everyone, for your participation today.
You.
Thank you.
Great.
Cheers, y'all.
Thank you. And can't wait to see everyone in the next one. So with that, folks, we are rounding out our afternoon. Afternoon where I am anyway. I don't know what time it is where you are. But with that, it is now time to give away the $250 Amazon gift card for this event. Now, you do have to be present during the entire event to be eligible to win the prize. And we do have a winner for today, and that is Rick Hall from Arizona. Congratulations to you, Rick. We will be in touch ASAP to get you your gift card. And with that, folks, we are done. On behalf of the Smart Brief team, I want to thank Big Commerce, Invista, and Manhattan for making this event possible. And thanks to you, the attendees, for being here and for your great questions and interest in the topic. That concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day.